June 22, 1941, 3:15 a.m., without a declaration of war, without a final warning. One of the greatest military offensives in history began. As darkness still covered the forests and rivers separating Germany from the Soviet Union, more than 3 million German and Axis soldiers waited silently along a front stretching nearly 1,800 miles from the Baltic Sea in the north to the Black Sea in the south. Thousands of tanks sat hidden beneath camouflage nets. Artillery crews made final adjustments to their guns. Pilots climbed into bombers, waiting for the signal. For months, the German High Command had prepared in complete secrecy. Railways had carried soldiers and equipment east under the cover of darkness. Fuel, ammunition, and food were stockpiled near the border. Engineers built bridges that could support the weight of armored divisions. Everything depended on speed. At exactly 3:15 a.m., the silence ended. Thousands of artillery guns fired almost simultaneously. The horizon erupted in flashes of orange and white. Within minutes, shells crashed into Soviet border posts, communication centers, and defensive positions. Telephone lines were severed. Command headquarters disappeared beneath explosions. Entire garrisons were overwhelmed before they understood they were under attack. Overhead, the roar of aircraft filled the sky. The Luftwaffe launched massive surprise attacks against Soviet airfields. Hundreds of Soviet aircraft were destroyed on the ground before their pilots could take off. Hangars burned. Fuel depots exploded. Thick columns of black smoke rose into the morning air. For many Soviet soldiers, the invasion came as complete shock. Although intelligence officers had repeatedly warned that Germany was preparing to attack, Joseph Stalin believed those reports might be attempts to provoke war. He feared reacting too early could give Germany an excuse to strike. Now, the attack was undeniable. Across the frontier, armored columns rolled forward. German panzer divisions moved with astonishing speed. Supported by mechanized infantry, engineers, and aircraft, they bypassed isolated pockets of resistance and drove deep into Soviet territory. This was Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Instead of slowly grinding forward, German forces sought to break through enemy lines, surround entire armies, and destroy them before they could regroup. Villages awoke to the sound of engines. Farmers abandoned their fields. Families gathered what little they could carry. Some fled east on foot. Others watched helplessly as endless columns of tanks disappeared over the horizon. The invasion was divided into 3 massive army groups. Army Group North advanced toward the great city of Leningrad. Army Group Center pushed toward Moscow, the political heart of the Soviet Union. Army Group South moved into the fertile lands of Ukraine, where vast grain fields and industrial centers were considered vital to Germany's war effort. Each advance involved hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Entire rivers became military highways. Roads disappeared beneath convoys stretching for miles. Never before had humanity witnessed a military operation on such an enormous scale. The Soviet response was chaotic. Many frontline units fought bravely but found themselves surrounded. Communication had broken down. Orders never arrived. Some commanders had already been killed. Others simply had no idea where the enemy was. In countless villages, Soviet soldiers fought until their ammunition was exhausted. Some destroyed their own equipment rather than let it fall into enemy hands. Others escaped into forests, determined to continue the fight as partisans. Within days, German forces had advanced hundreds of kilometers. Entire Soviet armies were trapped in giant encirclements. Near the city of Minsk, hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops became surrounded. Roads filled with abandoned vehicles. Fields became graveyards of burned-out tanks. Prisoners marched west under armed guard. For Germany, the victories seemed overwhelming. Newspapers celebrated what they described as the collapse of Soviet resistance. Many German commanders believed the campaign would be over within a few months. Even Hitler predicted the Soviet Union would crumble before winter. But appearances were deceiving. Behind the retreating front lines, something extraordinary was beginning. Factories were dismantled piece by piece. Entire industrial plants were loaded onto trains. Machinery, workers, engineers, even their families, were transported thousands of miles east, beyond the Ural Mountains. The Soviet Union was preparing for a war of survival. Back in Moscow, Stalin addressed the nation by radio. His voice was calm, but unmistakably serious. He no longer spoke only to soldiers. He spoke to every citizen, factory workers, teachers, doctors, farmers, and students. This was no longer simply a military conflict. It had become what the Soviet people called the Great Patriotic War. Every factory became a weapon. Every railroad became a lifeline. Every village became part of the defense. As summer wore on, German forces continued advancing at breathtaking speed. Yet the distances grew longer. Supply lines stretched farther behind the front. Fuel trucks struggled to keep pace. Roads turned into clouds of choking dust. The Soviet Union was not a small nation. It was vast. Every mile gained carried German soldiers farther from home and deeper into hostile territory. Unknown to many of them, they were marching into one of the harshest environments on Earth. Soon, the autumn rains would arrive, then winter, and with them would come an enemy no army could defeat. The invasion that began with stunning success was about to encounter resistance unlike anything Germany had ever faced. The road to Moscow was still open, but every mile forward would cost more than the last. The greatest invasion in history had begun. The greatest struggle was yet to come.